Have you ever noticed how some people seem to have an almost supernatural control over the environment around them? Without saying a word, they don't shout, they don't beg, they simply withdraw, and suddenly everything changes. The energy shifts. People start to question, to chase after, to feel. Now imagine if you did the same. If you stopped reacting immediately to everything, if you chose silence instead of the automatic response, retreat instead of explosion, what do you think would happen? That's where the point lies. When you stop being always available emotionally, physically, psychologically, the world around you goes into crisis because people are used to controlling you through your reactions, through your impulses, through your predictability. But the day you choose to withdraw, the game changes. And those who thought they knew, you realize they know absolutely nothing about you. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." Now just consider this. When you suddenly become unavailable, who begins to panic? Who starts to get annoyed? Who tries to push your buttons just to draw some kind of reaction from you? This tells you far more about them than it ever does about you. And more importantly, it shows just how easily you're still being influenced. Often without even knowing it. You continue to give yourself away, to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to hold on to people who deep down were never truly there for you. And each time you say yes when you don't want to, each time you reply right away, each time you react emotionally, you hand over a piece of your energy. So what are you left with at the end of the day? Exhaustion, irritation, a kind of hollowness you can't quite put into words. Let me tell you why, because you've been far too accessible to people who don't even deserve a second of your silence. This video is not about turning your back on the world. It's about choosing yourself. It's about learning what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, authentic, complete. And this process begins when you understand that silence can be stronger than 1,000 arguments. That withdrawal, when it comes from awareness and not from escape, is an act of power. So I ask you now, looking into your eyes, how long will you continue to be controlled by the emotions of others? How long will you react like a puppet every time someone pokes your wound? Maybe it's time to cut those strings, to withdraw, to become a mystery. Because when you stop being available, everything changes. The emotional availability trap. You have been taught to always be present, to respond quickly, to please, to say yes even when you wanted to say no. Since childhood, you have been conditioned to believe that your worth lies in how available you are to others. But here's a truth that perhaps no one has told you with this clarity. This excessive availability is not a virtue, it is a prison. And as long as you continue to think that you need to be accessible all the time, emotionally or otherwise, you will be manipulated, drained, and forgotten as soon as you are no longer useful. Do you know why? Because being always available makes you seem predictable, and everything that is predictable becomes a tool. People start to use you as an emotional emergency button. They press it when they want attention, relief, validation, and then put you back on the shelf. You don't notice it, but you're caught in the illusion that being there for everyone will somehow make someone truly be there for you. But that's not how it works. Carl Jung talked about the persona, the mask we put on to feel accepted, seen, loved. And it's this very mask that keeps you overly accessible. You say you're fine even when you feel like you're suffocating. You reply instantly to messages, even when you're completely drained. You find yourself explaining, justifying, defending, as if you owe the world an answer. But here's the truth. The more you center yourself on other people's stages, the more you vanish from your own. Constant availability is a quiet form of self-betrayal. It's a masked attempt at gaining validation, dodging rejection, and trying to manage how others perceive you. But this kind of control isn't free. It costs you your peace. Your life force gets scattered as though it's endless, when in reality it's not. It's limited, deeply limited. People who expect you to be constantly available often aren't truly interested in you. They're drawn to what you give. Your validation, your presence, your emotional support, your ability to distract them from themselves. But the moment you shift, set a boundary, pull back, choose not to engage, they start getting frustrated. They blame you, call you distant, even say you've changed. But it's not really change that bothers them. It's that you've stopped being useful to them in the way they were used to. And here's the harsh truth. The more accessible you are, the less others tend to value you. Because anything that feels overly abundant starts to lose its worth. When you're always there, your presence becomes disposable. No one truly respects what's handed to them without effort. and no one treasures what they never had to earn. So now stop and think, who truly deserves your time? Who deserves your attention, your presence, your listening? Or better yet, who deserves your absence? But before answering that, we need to understand one essential thing. Why do we react so much? Why do we give in so easily? What is behind this almost automatic desire to respond, justify, and please? The answer lies in what Carl Jung called psychic energy, and that is what we will talk about in the next part. Because your energy is all you have, and if you don't learn to protect it, someone will use it against you. If you find this content valuable, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. Carl Jung, the conservation of psychic energy. Carl Jung did not see the human psyche as an automatic machine that reacts to stimuli without consequences. For him, our mind is like an energy system, and every thought, emotion, and action consumes a part of that energy. The question is, are you choosing where your energy goes, or are you letting the world decide for you? Every time you react impulsively, you are wasting psychic energy. When you defend yourself against a criticism that didn't even deserve attention, when you respond to a provocation just to prove you are right, when you engage in useless discussions, when you try to please those who do not value you, you are spending your inner strength on what does not nourish you. And Jung was clear. That which you resist persists. The more you react, the more you bind yourself. People who feel emotionally drained all the time aren't weak. They're simply misdirected. And here's what happens when someone lives in a constant state of exhaustion. They become vulnerable. And vulnerability in this state turns you into easy prey. Emotionally needy, manipulative, or opportunistic individuals can sense it. They can tell that you haven't learned to protect your energy, that you react to everything, that you're always trying to fix everything and everyone, and they use that to their advantage. Jung once said that a healthy psyche is one that knows how to preserve its energy, keep it within the system. That means having the ability to say no without feeling guilty, to stay silent without believing you're weak, and to pause and observe before rushing into action. Because real strength isn't in constant reaction. It lies in knowing when and how to act. And that kind of discernment only comes when you know yourself deeply enough to understand your own impulses. How many times have you lost sleep over an unresolved conversation? How many times have you spent hours ruminating on what you should have said, or trying to understand why someone treated you poorly? This is energy being drained without return. You are keeping alive ghosts that should have died long ago and feeding dynamics that only exist because you insist on responding. Psychic energy is like a force field. When well guarded, it creates presence. You enter a room and command respect without saying a word. But when poorly managed, you become invisible, reactive, fragile, and the world has no mercy for those who give in easily. Therefore, start observing your own triggers. What makes you react automatically? What makes you lose your center? These are the exact points where your energy escapes, and that is where you need to work. Not to become cold or indifferent, but to be selective, to be sovereign over yourself. And here comes one of Jung's greatest revelations. When you conserve your energy, you break the projections that others place upon you, and that bothers a lot. Because now we are entering a dark territory, that of silent manipulation. In the next part, we will explore how opportunistic people feed off your energy and why your unavailability completely disarms these games. Get ready to look into the eyes of those who have always drained you without you realizing it. Manipulation and the projection game. You think you are in control. You believe your reactions are conscious choices. But the truth is darker. Most of your emotional responses are programmed, and those who understand this manipulate you easily. Opportunistic people don't need to raise their voices, threaten, or force situations. They just trigger the buttons you've left exposed, and you react always. Carl Jung called this projection, the psychological mechanism through which people project onto others what they cannot see in themselves. But there is another side to this phenomenon that few notice. While others project onto you, you also become the receptacle for these images. And the more emotionally available you are, the more you become a blank canvas for these projections. You know that friend who only shows up when their world is falling apart? That partner who constantly expects you to step in and fix everything? Or the person who compliments you? Just as long as you're serving a purpose for them? None of that is random. They're not really connecting with you. They're interacting with the version of you that fits their needs, the role you've agreed, often unconsciously, to take on. And why do you take it on? Because deep down, you fear letting people down. You fear not being loved. You fear being left behind. The most powerful manipulation doesn't come through yelling or confrontation. It works in the quiet weight of guilt, that feeling that you owe someone something, that you must always be available, always helpful, always understanding, even when doing so tears you apart from the inside. And here is the central point. The manipulator doesn't need to control you. They just need you to keep reacting the same way. But when you stop reacting, the game breaks. When you start saying no, responding with silence, withdrawing instead of explaining yourself, the projections begin to crumble. The mask they put on you falls, and this leaves people unsettled because they no longer know who you are. And worse, now they are forced to look at themselves. And not everyone is prepared for that. Your unavailability is a threat because it forces others to confront their own emptiness. The silence you offer reveals the internal noise they don't want to hear. And then comes the attack, the criticism, the emotional drama, not because you are wrong, but because you stopped serving as a convenient mirror. Carl Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you pull away, when you stop fueling the same old cycle, the other person's shadow begins to surface." And for those who've always used you as their emotional escape, that's unbearable. But let's turn the question back to you. Are you prepared to face the discomfort that comes with being misunderstood, rejected, or even blamed for choosing to protect yourself? Are you willing to sit with the silence that follows when a connection breaks? Because it's exactly within that silence that a different kind of strength begins to grow. One that's not built on reaction, but on awareness. And that is what we will talk about now. In the next part, you will understand why silence can be the most devastating weapon of the human psyche, and how it completely changes the dynamic between you and the world. The modern world is noisy. Everyone wants to be heard, wants to respond quickly, wants to win pointless debates and prove their point, even if it costs them their own peace. But there is a power that few know and even fewer master, the power of silence. Not the silence of passivity or cowardice, but conscious, strategic, brutally lucid silence. The kind of silence that is not absence but amplified presence. Carl Jung saw silence not as a void but as a fertile ground for inner transformation. When you stop reacting, you begin to observe, and by observing you see patterns that previously went unnoticed. Emotional repetitions, manipulation games, cycles of self-sabotage. Silence allows for lucidity, and lucidity is dangerous for those who live to control. Have you noticed how some people panic when you don't respond? When you don't explain yourself? When you simply disappear? It's not because they miss you, it's because your silence takes away their narrative control. While you speak, you are still in the game, but when you are silent, you change the rules, and that unbalances anyone who thrives on your reaction. True silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the ability to master your own energy. It's the decision not to get pulled into someone else's emotional chaos. It's the intentional act of not stepping into battles that drain you more than they serve you. Jung spoke of individuation, the journey of becoming your true self. And he said it requires this kind of distance. Because only in silence can you truly hear yourself, without the noise of the world clouding your clarity. But don't mistake this silence as easy. It comes with a cost. It will create space between you and those who only ever valued the version of you that met their needs. It will make you feel foreign to people who never saw the real you, only the reflection of their own projections. It may even make you appear cold, distant, or detached. But those reactions, they come from people who never cared to meet your depth, only to benefit from your presence. Here's the hard truth. As you grow and mature, you become more intentional with your words. You begin to realize that every sentence you speak is an investment of energy. And not everyone is worthy of that access to your inner world. Sometimes silence isn't withdrawal, it's sovereignty. It's the expression of someone who no longer feels the need to prove anything to anyone. Silence makes people uncomfortable because it confronts them with their own thoughts, their own mental noise. And that discomfort, it says far more about them than any explanation ever could. You don't have to justify your distance. Your absence speaks volumes all on its own. And those who feel threatened by it reveal how much they depended on your imbalance to maintain their own control. But the most powerful silence is not the one that disturbs the other. It is the silence that reconstructs you from within. The silence that connects you to something beyond external approval. It is in this internal space, free from others' demands, that you begin to recover your vital energy, to reconnect with your essence. And this is precisely what we will talk about in the next part, because it's not enough to just cut out external noise. You need to relearn how to use your energy consciously, to choose where it goes, where it stays, and most importantly, where it should never be wasted. It's time to learn to be selective with your own soul, how to practice conscious unavailability. It's no use understanding all of this intellectually if in practice you continue saying yes when you mean no, responding to messages that bother you, participating in empty conversations, and maintaining relationships that only exist out of inertia. Awareness without action is just another form of self-deception. True transformation begins when you firmly decide to become selective, and this requires emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability is not about being cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It's about no longer being accessible to anyone at any time for any reason. It's about taking control of your own energy, your own time, your own peace. And it all begins with the smallest choices. Not replying right away, taking a breath before you react, walking away from a conversation before it pulls you into chaos, turning off your phone without feeling guilty, saying not today, saying I'm not interested, saying I won't participate. But here's the key. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your absence. You don't need to defend your silence. Your only true responsibility is to yourself. And for some people, that's unacceptable. Because when you stop explaining, you strip others of their ability to trap you in a familiar emotional script where you're always the available one, the understanding one, the reliable one. And when you step out of that role, you reclaim your power. Carl Jung understood that every process of individuation goes through isolation, but not a depressive isolation, a sacred isolation. A time of inner retreat where you relearn to listen to your own voice without the world's interference, where you rebuild your identity not based on the gaze of others but from your own center. Want to know a good thermometer for your evolution? Observe who starts to distance themselves from you when you become more reserved. Observe who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Observe who accuses you of having changed when you finally start to protect yourself. These are not signs that you are wrong, they are proof that you have begun to free yourself. At first, being unavailable will feel uncomfortable. Guilt will creep in. You'll wonder if you're being selfish. Others may even tell you that you're being cold or too harsh. But that's all part of the process of unlearning. You've spent so much of your life being taught to put yourself second. So of course, change will feel unfamiliar. Not just for you, but for everyone who benefited from the version of you that always said yes. Choosing conscious unavailability is the beginning of real self-determination. Every time you say no to the world, you're saying yes to yourself. Every time you remove yourself from a toxic space, you're declaring that your peace holds more value than any hollow connection. And when you finally stop explaining your choices, something shifts. People start to respect you. Maybe not many, but the right ones will. But not everyone is ready for this type of presence, because your emotional absence will expose wounds they do not want to face. It will reveal how much they depended on your emotional chaos to feel in control, and it is at this moment that the rupture comes. And with the rupture comes the pain, the loneliness, the estrangement, the feeling that you are losing something when in fact you are just freeing yourself. But what happens after that? What comes after the distancing? What is born from the silence? In the last part, we will talk about this, about the rebirth that only happens when you have the courage to be misunderstood, to be alone, and to become whole on your own. It's time to understand why the loneliness of the strong is the path to true freedom. The loneliness of the strong and the rebirth of the self. When you stop being available to everyone, something profound begins to happen. First comes the silence. An uncomfortable silence that seems to scream inside you. You wonder if you did the right thing, if you are being too harsh, if you are losing people who liked you. But gradually, this silence transforms. It begins to cleanse, to calm, to heal. And then comes solitude, but not the solitude of absence. It is the solitude of total presence, your own. The solitude of the strong, the solitude of one who no longer betrays themselves to keep others close. And in the space where confusion used to live, clarity begins to take root. Where anxiety once thrived, peace starts to settle in. Where there was once a constant craving for connection, a quieter, deeper strength emerges. The strength that comes from being complete within yourself. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the journey of becoming your true self. He said it requires stepping back from the collective, detaching from the persona, and walking alone for a while. And that's exactly what you're doing when you choose to become unavailable. You're not running away from the world. You're finally coming home to yourself. This is the moment when you stop merely reacting and begin creating. You no longer let circumstances shape you. Instead, you start shaping your reality from the inside out. And those who become unsettled by your absence, they never truly wanted you. They wanted the part you played in their story. Now that you no longer fit that role, they don't know what to do with you. And that in itself is freedom. Yes, you'll lose people, but you'll find yourself. You'll step away from certain environments, but you'll reconnect with your true nature. You may be misunderstood, but slowly you'll start to be respected. Because when you're no longer available for just anything, you become something else entirely. Valuable, rare, unforgettable. Make no mistake, this is a rebirth, a new beginning. The start of a life where you're no longer available for emotional scraps, for manipulative games, for emptiness disguised as love. From here on, you only welcome what aligns with your peace, your truth, your sense of wholeness. And if you've made it this far, it's because some part of you is already prepared for this new chapter. A part of you already knows. Being loved means nothing if it requires abandoning yourself. Real self-love begins the moment you choose you, even if that choice means standing alone for a while. Now I want to hear from you. Are you truly ready to be misunderstood, rejected, or even disliked, all for the sake of your own inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being fully, unapologetically you? If this message spoke to you, if it resonated deep, drop a comment below. I choose my peace. Let's see how many of us are ready to step into this transformation. And whatever you do, don't stop here. Keep watching the next video. It's more important than you might think. I'll see you there.